Hi, it's me, Heather Wright with Heather Wright and Associates at Remax Concepts. I wanted to talk to you today about the appraisal process and why you should care. So no matter if you are a buyer or a seller, unless there is a lot of cash involved in the purchase of a property, you're probably going to have to deal with an appraisal. And so how that works is a buyer makes an offer on a property and they're probably going to get a loan for some of that purchase price. So then their bank is going to want to hire an appraiser, which is a third party, an unbiased third party, to make sure that the value of the property is what the buyer and the seller have agreed on already. So for example, let's say you have agreed to pay $1 million for a house, and the appraiser is going to go out, and if they feel that the house is worth $1 million or more, great, no problem. You pay the $1 million, everybody walks away happy. And if the appraiser goes out and says, whoa, this house is not worth $1 million. What were you guys doing when you came up with this price? It's only worth $250,000. That's a problem. And now we have to fix it. So what are the choices if you have an appraisal problem? Well, if you are the buyer, then you could just pay out of pocket for the difference between what the appraised value is and the price of the house. In this case, that is $750,000, probably not the best investment choice that you can make. So if you're the seller, you could say, well, shoot, we tried to get $1 million for the house. We thought it was going to work. Oops, it's not going to. So we'll discount the price to $250,000, which is where the appraiser said that it was worth. So if you're a buyer, you could pay out of pocket. If you're a seller, you could discount completely, or you could meet in the middle somewhere. Maybe as a buyer, you are willing to pay some above appraised value, and as a seller, you're willing to discount some, and so you guys can negotiate and find a happy medium. Or maybe none of that is going to work, in which case that sucks and the deal is probably going to blow up. And so what does that mean if you are the buyer? If you have purchased a house and you cannot come to terms after it has not appraised properly, then you can walk away from the deal. You do receive your earnest money back, but you've probably spent money on a home inspection and of course on the cost of the appraisal. So you do lose a little bit of money, although it's not necessarily bad money spent to find out that a house is not worth what you thought it was going to be worth. So you essentially save a bunch of money by not overpaying for a property. And then your property search begins again. So there's some time and some money invested in that process if you're unable to come to agreement on appraisal. If you're the seller, then you could try and put the house back on the market and find a different buyer who is willing to pay the price that you want. Although you're sort of in a rock and a hard place there, because let's say you put your house that has appraised at $250,000, you put it back on the market for $1 million. And then somebody calls and they say, hey, I just saw your house come back on the market and I wondered what happened with that sale that it didn't go through. And so then your realtor is going to tell them, oh, well, it didn't appraise. There's automatically a red flag for the next buyer to ask questions and probably get you a lower price on the next round. If the person who was under contract for your listing financed through FHA or VA, which in the case of $1 million sale, neither one of those are options, but for regular price houses, they very well could be. Then you might have other problems because a VA appraisal is going to stay in the VA database. So now you can't sell it VA. And I think an FHA appraisal will stay in that particular bank's database. So if the first buyer got their loan through Wells Fargo and it didn't appraise, and then the next buyer gets their loan through Wells Fargo, then that's going to be a red flag at Wells Fargo that, hey, we're going to have an appraisal problem on this particular property. So there's a lot of things in motion when it comes to selling your house after having an appraisal problem, hence the rock and the hard place. You could also not sell your house. I mean, of course, it's your house, so you have lots of options on what you could do. Maybe you want to rent it instead. Lots of things to consider. Ultimately, those are some things that can happen during the appraisal process, and why it's a good idea to have an experienced real estate agent working on your behalf to make sure that you do not pay $750,000 out of pocket for a house that isn't worth it. And also to make sure that you get the best price for your house that you're selling, and you don't find yourself in a situation where you've overpriced it $750,000. Now, I use these examples because in the Des Moines market, that's pretty ridiculous. It is unlikely that that would happen. However, if you're watching this and you're in California and that sounds like the story that every person on your street has to tell, well, that's just a different market than what we have here in the Midwest. So if you have any questions about buying a house or selling a house or the appraisal process, let me know. I'm not only here to help you, but I'm also here to help you make wise financial decisions and not waste $750,000.